Wonderful story of love. Tell it to me again. Wonderful story of love. With the immortal strain. Angels with rapture announce it. Shepherds with wonder receive it. Sinner, oh, won't you believe it? Wonderful story of love. 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 Though you are far away, wonderful story of love. Still he doth call today, calling from Calvary's mountain, down from the crystal bright fountain, e'en from the dawn of creation. Wonderful story of love. Wonderful story of love.
All right. Daniel chapter 3. Chapters 3, 5, and 6 are kind of anomalies with the balance of this book. Chapters 3, 5, and 6 are historical narratives, unlike the apocalyptic language that the balance of this book contains. These are historical demonstrations of the central truths that the apocalyptic parts of the book are describing. These are proofs, if you will. Okay, the apocalyptic sections are promising that God rules over the kings of men and that his saints are going to be vindicated in the end, essentially affirming the same thing that the book of Revelation is teaching. Doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter how bad it is. It doesn't matter that it looks like the enemy has got the advantage. Christ wins. The war is God's. And we have no reason to fear, no reason to surrender, no reason to switch sides. And that's what a lot of people do. Is when the side that they're on looks weak, they move to the strong side. And there's no need to do that, because ultimately God wins and his children will be vindicated. We see those truths played out in historical events in chapters 3, 5, and 6 in this book. And so that's an important aspect of what chapter 3 is dealing with. What happens in each three of the cases of these historical demonstrations is a proud ruler issues some kind of decree that defies God or that targets God's people. And in each one of those cases, the decree is overturned and the offender is judged by God. So the apocalyptic language of this book is saying God is in control and God will win. And these three events say, let me show you what I'm talking about. There was this king that did this. And this is what God did in response. And this is what happened as a result. And you see that the king is defeated and that God is elevated. That's what's happening here. So whether it's the fire that can't burn of the fiery furnace, whether it's the hand that writes the judgment on the wall, whether it is the lions that will not bite, the message is the same, and it's very clear. The saints are going to endure and God reigns. The enemy of God does not succeed. God ultimately succeeds. Now, that's the general overview. But there's something I think that's even more important for us to pick up in this chapter, so I'm going to probably spend a bit of time stressing it because, at least for me, you can't say, y'all might say, well, I've known that all along. I didn't really pick up on it until relatively recently. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. And so we want to notice that and make sure that we're all paying attention to it. By the way, you may all go, no, I think you're all wet on that. And maybe you'll convince me that I'm seeing something that's not really there. So that's an open possibility as well. Chapter 3, let's read verses 1 through 7 to begin with. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and its breadth 6 cubits, and he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. This thing was 90 feet tall. This thing is big. Now, whether that's the entire statue that's 90 feet tall and there's some kind of a base that's fixed up in that, I don't know. I think that what we can generally say is that from whatever ground level would be considered to the top of the head of this thing, we're dealing with 60 cubits. But that's high. And that's noticed. And that's quite significant. By the way, that's not the biggest ancient statue that was ever built. So it's not as crazy as some people. Well, that's just entirely too big and that's ridiculous. That's not the case. There are other colossal figures that have been built in history. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar sent to gather the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, and the counselors, and the treasurers, and the justices, and the magistrates. That's important. Because if you rule the courts, you've got unlimited power. So he brings all of the officials of the land, including judicial officials, all the officials of the provinces, to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So not only does he set this thing up, but he has a big to-do. And he makes every person in any position of power anywhere in the province of Babylon physically, personally show up for this big to-do. He is making a statement. And he is communicating something to these people. The satraps and the prefects and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices. By the way, treasurers are important too, because the second most important thing to possessing the judiciary is possessing what? The treasury. That is the single most powerful thing about the U.S. Congress, is that they have control of the treasury. And so he's got all of those people. And they show up, it says, gathered for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. They stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And the herald proclaimed aloud, "You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages." Now, this is an important opening too. This is not just for the Babylonians. This is for the Babylonians and anyone that the Babylonians have authority over. All of the peoples, all of the nations of whatever language that they may speak. These are the things that divide human beings, by the way. When God divided up man at the Tower of Babel, and don't miss out that this is in the same part of the world that the Tower of Babel happened generally. When God did that, what did he do in order to separate people and keep them separated? He confused their language. A big part about what creates, in fact, I was just having a conversation with Byron before class started. A big part about what creates some commonality between different nationalities is the root of their language. And so we have a lot more in common with Western European countries than we do with Eastern countries, because our language derives from those Western European countries' languages, which ultimately derive from Latin, as opposed to like Russia, whose language and mindset and practices trace back to Greece instead of Rome. And those things never completely melt away. And the commonality of the language is part of what allows us to communicate freely with one another, share ideas with one another, and have some connection. And I'll tell you, I'll just give you an example. If you can put your imagination hat on, place yourself in some remote location. Okay, we can make this really, really simple. Let's say you're dropped in New York City. Or we can make this a little more complex and a little bit better. You're dropped in Toronto. The big language in Toronto is what? Canadian French. Or let's even be more interesting. You're dropped in Tokyo or Shanghai, where everybody is a different ethnicity than you, everybody looks different than you, everybody has different values than you, everybody speaks a different language than you. Here you sit in this faraway place with nothing in common with these people, and there's one other person that shows up that speaks your language. Who do you gravitate toward? Who do you feel a commonality with? Who do you assume thinks more like you? So this is a huge thing. And not every nation that Babylon controlled spoke the same language as the Babylonians. Hebrews were one example. So when Daniel and his 3 friends got moved, what was one of the first things that the Babylonian establishment did? Teaching them their ways, teaching them their language, changing their names to names that reflect their language rather than the Hebrew place that they were from, to start assimilating them into their society. So this statement is simply saying it don't matter who you are, it don't matter what ethnicity you are, it doesn't matter what nationality you are, it doesn't matter what language you speak. You have to listen to this command. And listen to what the command is. You're commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. We've got this 90-foot golden statue that Nebuchadnezzar sets up. And basically he says, anytime you hear music, and there's 2 ways to read this. You either read this to say all these things have to sound at the same time, that there's some kind of purposeful sound that's being made that says it's time to worship. Or you can read this that says, doesn't matter what the source is or where, when you hear these things sound, it needs to remind you of Nebuchadnezzar. And you need to bow down and worship. Whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. We don't have all the history on this proclamation as to how he derived, what the signal was going to be, or how quickly the response was going to be, or whether you had an opportunity for appeal, which clearly is not provided in this provision. It's immediately this is to happen. There's no appeal process. We talk about how important due process is in our country, right? Which means that if the government accuses you of doing something, you have the right to the due process of having the opportunity to answer and respond, so that you don't just immediately proclaimed guilty. Because we believe that the government can do what? Can be wrong. But there's no provision for that here. Immediately. If you don't do this immediately, the judgment's carried out. Yes. Right. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm convinced that you're right. Correct. Now, the next thing is this. There are lots of other ways to execute people. Why this one? I have no idea. I don't know what, but I can tell you this. That's a miserable way to die. And that's the kind of thing that would, in fact, cause people to go, okay, That's not what I want to happen to me. And it tells us that he was serious. He was serious about discouraging people from disregarding this commandment. Therefore, as soon as all the people heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, that's that last phrase is the one that gets me, every kind of music. It makes it hard for me to say that it was a specific event. But anyway, all the peoples, nations, languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now, I'm going to stop right there and tell you that is a general statement. That is not saying there aren't individuals that rebelled and did not do this thing. It's saying that generally people that received this command did what? They followed it. Which, by the way, does anyone really blame them? All right, so that's the factual basis, this 90-foot golden image. And that's about as deep as most of us ever think about this. But there's something else I want you to consider. There is a deliberate contrast that is being set up here by Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. That dream was of an image that was made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay and iron. And he was scared by that image and he wanted to know what that image meant. And the short version of his answer was, well, it means this. It means that your reign is limited. You're the gold head, but you don't continue to reign. There's someone who reigns after you, and they're represented by the silver. And there's someone who reigns after them, and they're represented by the bronze. And there's someone who reigns after them, and they're represented by the iron. And this image didn't even say the head of gold, and then there's going to be a nation of silver that comes after you, and then there's going to be gold again, which would signify what? You return to power. No. There's somebody after them and somebody after them. And then this indefinite time of divided nations, various different groups, some of which are strong and some of which are fragile. And there's no more gold in this image. So Nebuchadnezzar builds an image specifically that is what? Gold from top to bottom. You know what Nebuchadnezzar is saying? My reign's not going to end. What he's doing is shoring up his power. He's just been shocked by being told your reign is limited. And his thing is, okay, how do I respond to that? Here's how I respond to that. I make everybody in the nation acknowledge that I am supreme ruler. And bow before this image that is all gold, that is a response to the dream of a bunch of kingdoms. Nope, there's only us, and we will never end, and we go from the top all the way to the feet. That's a proclamation. The entire image is gold. He's defiant of God's, remember Daniel's response. Daniel says, well, this is the image you had, and this is what it means. And initially, he's like, wow, my wise men couldn't tell me what I dreamed. Daniel did tell me what I dreamed, and so he must be right. He got from God, a God that clearly is more powerful than our gods, because our people couldn't do this image, and now he's formatted a plan to keep what was prophesied by God from coming to pass. Everybody in control. people in control of the money, the people in control of the judgments, the people in control of the lawmaking, the people in control of executing the laws. Every level of government has to say, Nebuchadnezzar alone is the ruler. And every time this music is played of any kind, they have to stop and acknowledge. This is really similar to, for instance, the purpose of the Lord's Supper. The reason that we take it continually is for what? So that we remember. That's what he's doing. He's building a remembrance, a regular remembrance into the fact that he is the emperor and there is no other. And that is in direct defiance of God's prophecy to him. God brought the vision to him. God brought the vision to Daniel. God gave the explanation of the vision through Daniel. And this is Nebuchadnezzar's response. And it establishes an extremely key theme: human pride in defiance of divine sovereignty. I don't care what you say. I will not give up my place. That's going to resurface. It's going to resurface in chapter 4. It's going to resurface in chapter 5. It's going to resurface several times. So this is setting the stage for persecution of those who refuse to conform to the dominant power. And that's a pattern that's repeated in 6 and a pattern that's repeated in the book of Revelation and all throughout the scriptures, quite frankly. You might even have a correlation between the ideas of this golden image that Nebuchadnezzar set up and the image of the beast that's talked about in the book of Revelation. So that is the substantive discussion of what Nebuchadnezzar is doing here. He's come up with a plan that's going to thwart God's vision of the future and keep Babylon in control. So we have a contest now. Who's more powerful, Nebuchadnezzar or God? Who's more powerful, the armies of Babylon or God? Who's really in control, men or God? So let's pick up the reading in verse 8. At that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning fiery furnace." That's good legal language. Shall means it must be. It's not may, but shall. There are certain Jews. Anybody want to guess who they are? Yeah, that's their Babylonian name, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the 3 friends of Daniel. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon. By the way, they don't like these Jews having this position of power. But from Nebuchadnezzar's standpoint, the bigger problem is this: he has elevated them to positions of authority and power, and they have influence over people. And they're not respecting his ultimate authority. And that's dangerous. So what do you do to those kind of leaders if you want to retain control? Now let's just talk about history. What happened with the communist takeover in China? What happened to political dissenters with it? What happened during the revolution in Russia? What happened to the dissenters, the people who were loyal to the Tsar? What happened to them? They were executed. Why? Because they were threats. That's what happens in every case where there's a coup or a takeover or a change of power. We get rid of all of the enemies. Sometimes they stop short of actually killing everyone. And they do what? They just exile them or they put them in jail. But you go to the French Revolution. How did they deal with the opposing powers of the French Revolution? Well, the same way. The guillotine was really effective at it. And you just go through history and you'll see it over and over and over and over again. It was not any different here. So these Jewish boys who have been elevated to positions of leadership, these other people who are around them don't like that idea to begin with, and now they have something to exploit. They're not bowing down to you like you commanded. There are certain Jews whom you've appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. Now you notice how broad that statement is. It's not pay no attention to this command, but pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. Now I'm going to stop here for a moment, make some what I think are obvious observations. Why was he so furious that these three are not doing this? Because they're high up, and how did they get to be high up? His personal favor. He had extended grace to these people that he had taken captive and gave them highly respected positions in his government and provided for them very well in education, in food, in clothing, in everything that they needed. Their entire existence was owed to him, and they are thumbing their nose at him. Now, notice the irony here. He's furious because they are thumbing their nose at him while he is doing what? Thumbing his nose at God. Yes, ma'am. Yep, I mean, that's also what happens. So Nebuchadnezzar, in a furious rage, it says in verse 13, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I've set up? If you're ready, now he's going to actually give these guys a second chance. If you're ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image that I've made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? That's the most important sentence in the statement, because that's where we get the true insight into Nebuchadnezzar's attitude on this. I don't care what your God said. I am going to have my way. And what God out there can undo what I am doing? Who is the God who will deliver you out of my hand? There is nobody that can deliver you from us. Listen, that arrogant statement has been made by nations all throughout history, not to the exclusion of our own, who has at times told folks there is no one who can deliver you from our wrath. So you better be concerned about what we say. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you to this matter. What an amazing testament to their faith. Standing before the king who is furious and who has just said, you know what? I'm going to give you one more chance. And if you don't take this chance, you will immediately be executed. And their response is, we don't need to answer you. If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. What God is there who can deliver you? He said, our God can deliver us. But listen to the next sentence. But if not, be it known to you, O king. That's pretty bold too. Let me set the record straight with you, sir. We will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. What they're essentially saying is our God is able to deliver us, but whether he does or not, I could care less. We're not going to follow this edict, and we are not going to elevate you to the position that you're demanding. Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury. The expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. His countenance was changed. Some translations may say just simply means that you could read it on his face. You know, you've been around people that got mad enough that you could just look at them and you knew they were mad. Or maybe when you were a kid and there's a kid that was kind of picking on you and they're bigger than you and you're just like poking at them back and poking at them back and poking at them back, and all of a sudden they look at you and you go, oh, I think I went too far. Or maybe it's your big brother or your mom. Yeah, see, I got more responses to mom, so. He got mad, personally angry. He felt a personal affront. Again, if he feels that way about this, how is he making God feel? Through his arrogance and defiance. Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. And so not only is he going to cast them into the furnace, but he says what? Build it up. Get it as hot as you can. He ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, their other garments. They were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. So there's 2 things that's going on here. This is going to play a role in a minute in showing the power of God, that their clothes were on them. But it also shows there wasn't any time taken at all, not even giving them time to remove their outer garments. They were bound just like they were at that moment and brought to the furnace. King's order was urgent. The furnace overheated. The flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, so that you might not think that the fire wasn't hot enough or that there was some problem with the furnace. No, the guys who delivered them to the furnace themselves sacrificed their life because it was so hot. These 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" And they answered and said to the king, "Yet true, O king. But I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like son of the gods." I'm out of time. I got to stop. We're going to leave it right there as a cliffhanger. We'll pick this up next time. There's a lot going on here, and it's very important. I thank you for your presence and your participation and attention.
Wonderful story of love. Tell it to me again. Wonderful story of love. wake the immortal strain. Angels with rapture announce it, shepherds with wonder receive it. Sinner, oh, won't you believe it? Wonderful story of love. Wonderful story of love. Wonderful story of love. Wonderful story of love. Wonderful story of